Okay. Now, there's different ways that you can look at that. And one of the ways you can look at it is like, that's dirty, that was wrong. But understand that that's the system that I grew up in. And it wasn't dirty, it wasn't wrong. And I know it's hard to kind of pick a side there. I've shown this video before at different places, different juvenile halls, and they're like, you can't show that here because, these guys are going to think that, we're bad. And then I've been at other places that say, yeah, go ahead and show it here. And it shows how far we've come, that it's not like that anymore. But regardless of how you look at it, the truth is, I put myself there. I did. Again, it's one of those things like I started speaking about, one of those things that I talked myself into and then found myself in a place where I just didn't want to be there. And when I show that video, another reason that I show it is that there is a place for every person. And me, at the time that I was there, I was very aggressive. I didn't care about girls. I didn't care about money. I didn't care about being out. All I cared about in my mid-20s when I was in Corcoran was, you will do what I say when I say it. And that was it. And I really didn't care about anything else. So I went out there 43 times, fought, and then they would shoot at us with live M16 rounds, and then we'd go back to the cell. I remember the first time I went out there, I remember I was standing, like you see the person go all the way to the back, because you can't rush people when they have handcuffs on. And so I remember standing there, and I remember looking up and thinking, how did I get here? At that moment, I remembered all the people that try to help me and say, hey, look, dude, you keep doing what you're doing, they got a place for you. And I would just keep doing what I was doing. But I remember in that moment, just like, felt more nervous than I'd ever felt. I see the gun aimed at me, these guys are about to come out. And I remember at that moment thinking, that was one of the most clearest moments, like, this isn't what I wanted to do with my life. So let me kind of break it down to you how it happened. Now understand, I'm going to say a lot of things, and you're going to probably say, well, if he knew all this, why did he keep doing that? But that's not how it happens. What happens is you live it, right? And then after, like when you were 12, you thought one way, then when you turned 14, you look back and it was like, okay, that was, how did I think that? How did I even like him? How did I even like her? What was wrong with me? How did I like that? And then when you're 15, it changes, then 17. So for me, a lot of the changes that happened and the ability to speak about things today happened after I got out. A lot of it was happening while I was in there. So I'll walk you through it. So please bear with me. And at the end, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. When I was 6 years old, my father used to take me to the bars with him. Now, my mom, what she would think is if my dad took one of the kids with him, that he would come back. So every time, because my parents were like contractors, right? And what they would do is like, they had ladders and trucks and they'd pick fruit. I'm from Tulare County. I remember when I grew up, I used to hang out with guys was from Tulare County and hung out with guys from Parkside and Eastside, Fresno and Westside. It was different then. And then you guys know it's all different now. Now it's like Fresno, Tulare County, it ain't gonna mix. But that's how I grew up. So sometimes like when I'm at different places, like I was at the Bulldog game Saturday, I still see people from way back in the day, like from Parkside. And they kind of like look at me and they don't recognize me because I removed all the tax and stuff, we changed. But I see them and it's just, and I recognize them. And it was just different then. So much has changed, right? It has. It changes like every 5 years probably now, like quick. So my mom, what she used to think is take one of the kids with you. So my dad would take me with him. And at the moment I felt like I was special. Like, yes, my little brothers, my older sisters, because there's 8 of us and I'm right in the middle. So I felt like, all right, my dad picked me. But what would happen is we would go, my dad would do a bit, and then he'd buy me whatever I wanted, marbles and ice cream, whatever. I was only 6. And then he would say, I'll be right out. He'd pull up in front of a bar, and I would wait for him. And I remember I'd have to go pee so bad. And it's like, when you're 6 years old and you're outside of a bar, and it's loud and the music's playing and it's just all crazy. And, I didn't know. At 6 years old, you don't know to get off, and you just don't. And I would wait for him. And every time the door would open, I would, is it him? And it wasn't him. I don't know how any of you are raised here, looking at me through the pods, wherever, but if you ever were with your parents or a guardian and they said they'd be right out and they'd just leave you in the car waiting, that sucks, man. Just waiting. Or at your house, we're just going to go to the store, we'll be right back, and then they don't come back and you're just waiting. Every car that goes by, if you're at a store and you're waiting, every person that comes out of the store, like I want to cuss right now. I still get pissed off about that. But that's what he would do to me. And then sometimes I'd fall asleep in the front seat of the truck, and I'd wake up and the person he was in the truck with wasn't my mom. And I would just keep pretending I was asleep because I didn't know what to do. What do you do when you're 6 years old, you fell asleep outside of a bar in a truck, and then you wake up and your dad's with someone else that isn't your mom? I didn't know what to do. So what I did is pretend like I was asleep. And, without even really knowing, a lot of the stuff that I was learning at that age was a lot of what I continue to be, is just this big pretender. And, if I seen something happening, pretend I didn't see it, which is good if you're running with the homeboys, because you do a lot of dirt that you got to pretend like you didn't see, right? Because you can't tell on anybody or talk about it, so you got to pretend like you weren't there. And then sometimes I'd wake up in the driveway, like I'd fall asleep and wake up cold, and I'd be in the driveway of a house I'd never been in. Like my dad would get in the truck, see me asleep, drive somewhere, and leave me out there. And I'd wake up freezing on the front seat, and, houses I'd never been at. And in the beginning, it didn't happen that much. It was once in a while. It was like maybe once a week. And it just kept happening. First grade, second grade, third grade. Eventually, I'd go 2-3 times every week this was happening. And then he signed me up for Little League. And I didn't know. Because, see, at 6 years old, your coping mechanism is, did you guys see the picture? Did you guys see the picture of me when I was, that little boy with the red and white shirt and I have freckles? That was me in third grade. I still, because all of us have that. All of us, since we're little kids, if any of you have kids or you have little brothers and sisters, you can't break those kids, Somebody goes off on them and hits them and makes them cry. Or you, if you remember, I remember, and then like the next day they're over it. In fact, they're saying like, don't cry, Mom, or don't worry about it, Mom. These little people. And that's how I was. My dad, what he would do is I'd come up, when we would get home sometimes, like at 1 a.m, he'd come out and we'd go home. My dad would teach me how to lie. At 6 years old, he was like, okay, if your mom asks, you better say this. This is what you say. You say we went over here. So at 6 years old, I was learning how to lie. And then this is what he would say. If you don't say this, then me and your mom are going to fight and it's your fault. And so I'm like, oh man, I can't rat out my dad. I don't want them to fight. And so it's 1 o'clock. It's a school night. I came home from school. I'm in first grade, jump in the truck. We go out there. I've been sitting outside of a bar. Now he's telling me to lie. I would get home, and then my mom would be awake and cuss, yell with my dad a little bit, and then you guys know what happened. She would corner me to the side. Where were you? And then my mom would tell me, I know you're lying. Because you're lying, that's why we're fighting. And I'd be like, I would just be like stuck. Like just stuck. Do you guys know what that kind of stuck feels like?